Good day from the International Space Station Flight Control Room at the Johnson Space Center in Houston as we begin our coverage of the launch of the unmanned Russian ISS Progress 57 cargo ship to the International Space Station. You are looking live at the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan on a cloudless day, very, very chilly, temperatures hovering around the freezing mark Fahrenheit, but a perfect day for a launch. And there is the Soyuz booster rocket, and encased at the upper stage of the Soyuz as the Progress 57 cargo craft, which is poised for launch just 23 minutes and 50 seconds from now on a fast-track 4-orbit 6-hour journey to the International Space Station. This launch is
still waking up at night with
anomaly about 20 seconds into its flight to deliver 2.5 tons of cargo to the International Space Station. With that unfortunate incident going to an accident investigation board now headed by Orbital Sciences Cargo.
In fact, it reduces the acidity levels by more than 50%, providing up to 12 hours relief. When heartburn or indigestion strikes, get fast-acting and long-lasting relief. Try Zantac.
In Baikonur on Monday as the 3-mile journey began right at 7 a.m. Baikonur time on Monday morning. Vehicle inside the Soyuz booster rocket. This is the first flight of a Progress on an upgraded Soyuz 2.1A booster, which utilizes an improved digital flight control system and is expected to provide more precise orbital insertion parameters in delivering the Progress to orbit less than 9 minutes after launch. As you can see, the viewers down in Baikonur on Monday were bundled up against the cold, the first layer of snow in the late fall, early winter temperatures down in Baikonur, and right at sunrise, the booster did reach the launch pad and was raised vertically on a hydraulic capability from its railroad car in order to be prepared for its launch today. Again, the weather conditions in Baikonur today are ideal. They're pristine with temperatures in Baikonur. That is Site 1, Gagarin's launch pad, about to lift off some 21.5 minutes from now. About 15 minutes ago, the clamshell-like gantry service towers separated from the vehicle, and the final checks of the gyroscopes and the flight recorders are underway by the launch team down in Baikonur. This fast-track journey of the Progress to the International Space Station mimics what the Russian flight controllers are doing on a regular basis and have been for the past couple of years, selecting a launch date that lines up for the proper phasing for a quick journey to the International Space Station, both for unmanned Progress vehicles as well as the Soyuz vehicles that transport crew members to the International Space Station. In this case, 4 minutes and 22 seconds before launch at 2:05 and 21 a.m. Central Time, the International Space Station will be flying directly over the Baikonur Cosmodrome, moving from southwest to northeast. Again, the ISS will pass directly over the Cosmodrome 4 minutes and 22 seconds before launch. At that time, the International Space Station at launch will be 1,243 miles ahead of the Soyuz, and at orbital insertion, 8 minutes and 45 seconds after launch, the International Space Station will be some 2,400 statute miles ahead of the Soyuz, ahead of the Soyuz booster and the Progress vehicle as it begins its burn program and the firing of thrusters to raise its altitude to match that of the International Space Station, and then eventually to catch up for a docking that is scheduled at 8:09 a.m. Central Time, some 6 hours after launch. This Progress is loaded with 2.9 tons of supplies. That breaks down to 1,940 pounds of propellant, 48 pounds of oxygen, 57 pounds of air, 926 pounds of water, and 2,822 pounds of dry cargo, i.e. supplies, for for the expedition crew on board the International Space Station. Again, the Soyuz booster that is propelling the Progress resupply craft to orbit will be launching into a very, very narrow corridor, a precise corridor. The launch time is selected to match the moment when the Earth's rotation brings the Baikonur Cosmodrome into the exact plane of the station's orbit as it flies just past the Baikonur Cosmodrome. The Soyuz booster, as you are familiar with, that will be propelling the Progress vehicle to orbit, is comprised of 3 stages. So on a crystal clear day, if all goes as planned, you'll be able to share with us a very, very good view of the Progress as it arcs out to the northeast, heading out over Central Asia en route to orbit, with orbital insertion planned 8 minutes and 45 seconds after launch. That will be followed by the deployment of its solar arrays and navigational antennas to begin the chase to catch up to the International Space Station, and a docking at 8:09 a.m. Central Time. The docking will occur at the Pirs docking compartment on the Earth-facing side of the Russian segment of the International Space Station. That docking port was vacated on Monday when the older ISS-56 Progress cargo craft filled with trash undocked from the Pirs docking compartment and backed away to a safe distance away from the station for 3 weeks of engineering tests by Russian flight controllers who will be gathering data on its characteristics and thruster firing plumes. That data will result in a deorbit burn on November 19th that will send the old Progress 56 craft into a destructive reentry back into the Earth's atmosphere. You are looking at a balcony view of the Russian Mission Control Center in Korolyov, the expansive International Space Station Flight Control Room. It is this flight control room that will take over operation and control of the Progress's automated path to the International Space Station once it reaches orbit, less than 9 minutes after its launch. Here in the International Space Station Flight Control Room at the Johnson Space Center in Houston, the Orbit 2 team of flight controllers has just taken a handover from the late night shift. The shifts have been skewed a bit to match all of the dynamic operations taking place on the International Space Station. This team of flight controllers is led by Flight Director Judd Freeling on the far right of your screen, having just taken a handover from Flight Director Emily Nelson, who was going off shift. Spacecraft communicator and astronaut Jim Kelly is at the top of your screen. He'll be talking to the International Space Station crew when required throughout the course of the day. The crew has just received its wake-up call for the day. They'll be moving into their daily planning conference in about 31 minutes to get caught up on the day's events and the timeline of activities that lie ahead for them as they press ahead with another busy day of work and research on board the complex. The Expedition 41 crew, you see their portrait there, led by Max Sarayev, the Russian cosmonaut, third from the left, joined by Reid Wiseman and European Space Agency Alexander Gerst. That trio will be preparing to come home in their Soyuz TMA-13M spacecraft on November 9th for a parachute-assisted landing on the steppe of Kazakhstan in the early morning hours of November 10th Kazakhstan time. The other 3 crew members, NASA flight engineer Butch Wilmore, Russian cosmonauts Alexander Samokhutyaev and Elena Surova, they are on board, having arrived just over a month ago in the midst of a 5.5-month mission on board the International Space Station. The countdown is proceeding on track at Baikonur, just 15 minutes, 24 seconds from launch. Everything in good shape. About 5 minutes from now, the Soyuz booster's gyroscopes will be in flight readiness, and the recorders will be activated. Again, enshrouded on top of this 3-stage Soyuz booster is the Progress 57 cargo craft carrying 2.9 tons of food, fuel, and supplies for the expedition crew aboard the International Space Station. The report from the visiting vehicle officer here in Mission Control reports that Progress has been placed on internal power, autonomous power, enshrouded again in the upper stage of the Soyuz booster. Everything in good shape. as we are poised for launch at the Baikonur Cosmodrome on a frosty but cloudless day, which should provide quite a view of the